we have you on because we want to get your take on this crush. And Gabe, I think the key question here is what has changed? Has anything really changed aside from maybe the interest rate backdrop to this? For instance, let's take QuantumScape, which reports after the bell today, and you cover that stock. It's down 77% from its highs. Should the stock ever have been at those highs? What is behind this decline?
Yeah, Melissa, it's certainly a good question. I think you could argue the EV complex overall year to date has certainly had a tough year. The basket of charging and battery stocks are down 30 to 40, 60% plus year to date versus the S&P up 10 to 12%. I think there's just a lot of enthusiasm that's come out of the stocks this year. There's overall plaguing the auto industry, the chip shortage. You have an increase in commodity prices like copper, steel, aluminum that could potentially put pressure on the margin side. And these stories always were longer dated investment cases that really take hold over the middle part of the decade and beyond. And so, which could be beyond anyone's realistic investment time horizon. So I think and you're seeing a lot of that enthusiasm come out a bit. But like we've said recently, we think the longer term stories are largely intact. In March, EV sales were highest on record. And in 1Q of this year, as a percentage of total sales, EVs was 6%, which doubled year over year. So I think the trends are still in place.
When I hear enthusiasm, Gabe, I think froth. Do you really mean froth? That some of the froth has come out of these names?
Enthusiasm, froth, tomato. You could argue, look, like the valuations are certainly a bit stretched coming into this year. And again, a lot of the stories are really plays on longer term themes, but we think those themes are in place. And yeah, so maybe you did see just a little bit of the multiples compress a bit. But like I said, I do think the long-term theses are in play, are intact.
Edison, you cover the Chinese EV makers, and so I'm wondering what your take is over there. I mean, is their fates dependent on the success or failure of Tesla in the Chinese market?
Yeah, so thanks for having me on. So I would point to two things, specifically on China EV, and it's sort of classified, I would say, in one bucket as competition, and the other side would be a rotation. The competition in the Chinese EV market is by far the most intense of any geography. If you look at the Shanghai Auto Show, there's literally every tech company in China coming up with an EV. Some of them are partnering up with local competitors, and they're releasing models fairly soon, some less than a year away. And so the competition that's coming has created a lot of anxiety among investors. And this is translating into fairly weak stock sentiment. The other issues, I would say, are a little bit more tactical. If you actually kind of just look at the market cap of NIO, XPeng, and Li, and you can even throw Tesla in there, and then you compare it against the traditional automakers. So, GM, Ford, Volkswagen, Daimler, et cetera, Hyundai, you can actually see there's been a big rotation from the new upstarts to the traditional incumbents. And I think that's a reflection sort of competition, but a different sort, which is the existing OEMs fighting for their lives and actually putting forth very credible plans for EV future and investing tens of billions of dollars. So I think you throw those two factors together, and then you had 2020, which was a year where all these stocks went up like crazy. It's kind of how you end up right now.
Yeah.
And then, we'll see what happens. It's a battle. I think it's truly a battle going forward.
Yeah, certainly GM, for instance, has really won a lot of favor for their EV portfolio. Gabe, last question to you, and unfortunately we're almost out of time here. But when you take a look at your space, a name like QuantumScape, and I hate to pick on them, but they are reporting after the bell. They were the target of a short seller report. And it wasn't the only one, recent de-SPACed company. At least 3 de-SPACed battery technology or EV companies were the targets of short seller reports. And I'm wondering if there was a certain amount of, tourist money going into the sector, because this is a sector, particularly when it comes to battery technology, it's harder to understand. I mean, it's not intuitive. There's a lot of complicated things going on. It all sounds great, and it may be the wave of the future. But in terms of understanding the actual technology and what companies have right now, they're easy targets, too, for shorts.
Yeah, Melissa, it's definitely a good question. As you mentioned, battery conversations could certainly be quite dense for investors. particularly when we get into the chemistries around solid state and the potential there. Obviously, solid state has been or has showed promise before, and so investors, I guess, are questioning if this time is really different. And I think that, again, the issue with QuantumScape is the technology looks impressive and attractive, but it's still quite a ways away until commercial applications, or you're seeing the technology in vehicles on the road. And the company's been upfront about issues potentially with manufacturing and scaling the technology. But again, with first revenue not really expected until 2025, you could argue for sure it's an easy one to pick on.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.